What's up, guys? It's Dr. Murphy, Murphy Medical Associates, and our team at coronatestct.com. Stay tuned because we're going to talk about the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine that has just received FDA EUA, that is emergency authorization use. That's emergency authorization use for its one-shot vaccine that doesn't require the deep freeze. We're going to give you a little bonus info about which best vaccine for you, so stay tuned. All right, guys, so welcome aboard to Murphy's Medical Minute. I am here. Today is and I am not a cat, right? I am here and I am not a cat. I'm prepared to go with it. Go forward, Judge. I am prepared to go forward, but I'm not a cat. I am Dr. Murphy, Murphy Medical Associates, and our team at coronatestct.com, breaking some news for you today. This news is very important. As many of you know, I have reviewed the vaccines on Periscope since October. We are talking about the different vaccine types. And the one that I was looking most forward to were what we call the adenoviral vector vaccines, the adenoviral vector mRNA vaccines. So these are vaccines that infect your cells just like a normal virus would infect your cells. And it tricks the cells to make the to make the spike protein using a single set of the mRNA instructions. mRNA is messenger RNA. Today I'm going to go through the newest of the entrants, vaccine number 3. It's vaccine number 3 produced by a company called Johnson & Johnson's out of New Jersey, and its arm in Europe through Janssen Pharmaceuticals. Johnson & Johnson vaccine has received emergency use authorization today. So I want to talk a little bit about the vaccines. I want to talk a little bit about the variants because it's so important to understand which variants are covered by which vaccine. And a question we get all the time is the following: which vaccine is the right vaccine for me? One of my longtime listeners, Linda from Hartford, has always asked this question. It's a great question. These are really different vaccines. They are really different strategies for apples and oranges comparisons. Apples and oranges comparisons. I don't know if you remember, but the first vaccines that came out required the deep freeze. These vaccines were the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. These vaccines were brand new vaccines, never been really used for this purpose in the public ever. And so there was some trepidation. We found 1 in 3 people didn't want the vaccines. Healthcare workers were refusing the vaccines because these were new vaccines, brand new vaccines, and people did not know what would happen. We've administered millions of these vaccines now with fairly safe protocols. We know that there are some anaphylaxis, allergic type reactions with the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. We also know some people have worse reactogenicity, meaning they get later effects. Someone called it Moderna arm, where we have an aching and a lasting neurologic issue in the area. These effects are small. These effects are small. In fact, when I think about the influenza vaccine, I have to tell people 1 in a million people with the influenza vaccine will get ascending paralysis, called Guillain-Barré. Even far less people were affected with the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines with another unusual condition called immune thrombocytopenia, where our body's immune system is triggered to attack our platelets and drop our platelets. It's a very rare condition that happens with the mRNA vaccines. Because of this, I've said, use the mRNA vaccines. If you can get those vaccines, take them. But as I covered on this channel a few more times, the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine may not cover some of our newer variants. One of the things we think about is we think about something called variant escape. We think about variant escape. And we've demonstrated that already. One of the things we've seen with the variant issue is that the South Africa variant completely escaped the AstraZeneca vaccine. It completely escaped the AstraZeneca vaccine to the point where AstraZeneca just shut down their trial in South Africa, simply because the EEK mutation, the E484K mutation, tended to have some issues. It tended to have some issues that enabled vaccine escape. Now, some of you may be asking, well, what is up with these variants and why does this matter with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? Well, let me show you a little bit about the variants. The variants that we see here are twofold, right? There are mutations in what we call the receptor binding domain, right? That is like the hand that grabs the cell, the receptor binding domain. And there are also mutations in what we call the N-terminal domain, the NTD. These areas are different. They're different areas of the spike protein. And these different areas can lead to different effects. The most common variant that we know about and currently see spreading in the United States is B117. That's the top, let's take a point here. That's the very top of these variants. The very top of these variants, the B117, originally isolated in the United Kingdom. The B117 variant has mutations that can, sorry about that. I got important text from important people that are on way more important radio and talk shows than me. So we'll talk with them. Anyways, where was I? The B117, or the variant isolated in the United Kingdom, we now are getting data that show that it is likely more deadly, and it is also likely more contagious. That deeper contagion that we see is causing increased spread. We see B117 coming up from New York City, as we're in the tri-state area in Connecticut and New York and New Jersey. And I can tell you right now, I have seen firsthand New York City spread to Connecticut. In fact, we have a confirmed set of UK variants in one of the local cities. Why? What happened? Well, they had a Super Bowl party. They had a Super Bowl party, and people came up from New York City, went to the Super Bowl party, and infected the local residents here in Connecticut. So we have UK variant spread that way. How do we know this? We do genomic surveillance. At coronatestct.com, our positives are reflexed to identify variants. We do genomic surveillance. Not a lot of genomic surveillance is going on in the United States. Why does this matter? It matters because the other variants that you'll see down here, right? Let's see, I got it right there. The variant B1351, that's the South African variant that is escaping. In addition to that, we have the P1 variant down here, right there. So the P1 variant is out of Brazil, and those variants have been shown to escape vaccination. They escape vaccination. And we've seen that. I just showed you where the South African variant has escaped vaccination. One of the other things that we're really a little bit worried about is the fact that as we can see here, I don't know if you guys can take a look at it and see, but the Pfizer vaccine also appears to be eluded by the Brazilian and the South African variants. I don't know if you can see all the way up top, right? Follow my mic there as it pounces. Right, all the way up top, we see that after two doses of the Pfizer vaccine, we are seeing less effect. We are seeing in-laboratory failure to neutralize the South African variant based on the sera, the blood from a Pfizer vaccinated patient. This all matters so very importantly. And the reason why it matters and why it's so important here, put simply, is that we now have spread of the variants in the United States. These variants are real, they are viable, and yes, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine are likely going to prevent the more deadly UK variant, the variant isolated in the UK, right? They are likely to prevent B117 infection and prevent severe infection. We already know that the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine prevent symptomatic COVID at a 95% efficacy, roughly. Moderna was 94.1%, Pfizer was 95% prevention of symptomatic infection. So why do we need these other vaccines? Well, we need them because I have a negative 98-degree freezer that is sitting empty waiting for the freezer vaccines, and I like to call them the deep chill vaccines. We, right now, can accept the deep chill vaccines, but there's not enough deep chill vaccines out there. That's because they're having difficulty manufacturing enough of the lipid particle that surrounds the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. So we need a third vaccine, a vaccine that is not a deep chill vaccine. We need to chill, right? We need to chill. And the only way I think we're going to chill is by having a vaccine that can be refrigerated, that can be transported, and that can be single dose. Enter Johnson & Johnson. Enter Johnson & Johnson. Now, what's amazing about the Johnson & Johnson data, and I'll tell you right now, is that we are seeing a significant reduction in moderate to severe COVID across all nations studied. Across all nations studied. Now, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was studied in the US. It was studied in Brazil. And it was studied in South Africa, which means that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has data against the South African variants and the Brazilian variants. Against the South African variants and the Brazilian variants. The Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine was 85% effective at reducing severe disease across all sites. And if you look at the data, if you take a really, really close look at the data, one of the things that's pretty amazing about it, one of the things that is pretty amazing about this, put simply, is that we are seeing true impressive data here, right? The impressive data that we're seeing, and I'll show you, is right here. Take a look. After 28 days, there was a non-fully statistically significant 100% reduction in hospitalization. Do you understand what that means? You don't get hospitalized. You don't get hospitalized with the South African variant if you've had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine after 14 to 28 days. And so there's a 14-day and a 28-day. We saw that there were placebo cases versus adenovector cases of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, 100% reduction. Now, because of statistics, we have to temper that down to 74.3% to have a 95% confidence interval. But I'm here to tell you right now, if you get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the data preliminarily show that if you get that South African variant, you're not getting hospitalized. If you get the South African variant, you're not getting hospitalized. These are amazing, amazing data points here. These are amazing data points. In addition to this, we look at 24 to 48 days out. And at 49 days is when this Johnson & Johnson vaccine truly outperform. They truly outperform. I can't believe how they truly outperform. But more importantly than any of that is that the vaccine is a single dose. Single dose. And because it's a single dose, we can get it to so many different people. And because we can get it to so many different people, we can benefit. We can benefit so many people. And I think the way to do that, the way to benefit so many people here is put simply, to get the vaccine out. We have to get the vaccine out. There's no reason not to get the vaccine out here. It is EUA approved. It is a single dose. And it is, put simply, very effective at preventing severe disease. Very effective at preventing severe disease. And it's very effective at preventing infection, especially of the South African variant, which we currently know in laboratory data that Pfizer and Moderna are going to see escape of the South African variant. In addition, AstraZeneca and their vaccine had to be completely halted against the South African variant. The E484K variant renders the current vaccines, especially the AstraZeneca vaccines, less effective. Currently, far less effective. Because it's far less effective, it may not be the right vaccine for South Africa. What will be the right vaccine? Well, right now, J&J appears to be in the driver's seat. Right now, it appears to be in the driver's seat. And because it's in the driver's seat, it is crystal clear to me that it will win internationally. It's going to win internationally. And so that means there is going to be a very big demand for the J&J vaccine. Very big demand. One of the things I promised you is I promised I was going to tell you about the best vaccine for the best person. So I want to go through that with you here before I finish up this live stream. I managed to cut down the time on the live stream. We've talked a lot about the variants here. We talked a lot about the variants. We talked about the variant up here, the B117. That's the UK variant. It's isolated. And the B117 variant is interesting because it's got mutations that make it more infectious and likely more deadly. More infectious and more deadly. The South African variant, right? That's the B1351 variant. The B1351 variant is demonstrating that it has vaccine escape from the AstraZeneca vaccine and in the laboratory from the Pfizer vaccine. And I'm sure we'll see more data like that, which is where the South African variant can be effectively combated with the J&J vaccine. In addition to that, the J&J vaccine appears to have protection against the Manaus variant, the P1 variant, isolated in Brazil because the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was studied in Brazil and found to be effective against that variant. This is big news. Big news. Today is February 24th, 2021, and the FDA has approved the Johnson & Johnson, the J&J vaccine for use in the United States. For use in the United States. Currently, there are 4 million doses available that can be immediately sent out. But Johnson & Johnson promises 240 million doses by the end of March. Why? They don't need the fancy lipid particle. They don't need the fancy lipid particle. We know based above that there are genomic surveillance programs going on in lackluster form in the United States, which means we're kind of flying blind. We're flying blind to what's going on with genomic surveillance, but not at coronatestct.com. Our team at Murphy Medical Associates is testing every positive. We are sending positives for genomic surveillance, and we're finding UK variants. We found them in Fairfield County. We found them in New Haven County. We found them in Westchester County. We're going to continue to find them. And they're all over. The UK variant is all over in New York City. B117 is in New York City. More contagious, and likely more deadly. I can't say that about the Brazilian or the South African variant yet until we get the data. But one thing's certain. We need that Johnson & Johnson vaccine right now. We need it right now. There's no other way around it. So I promised you guys my breakdown of who should get what vaccine. Who should get what vaccine. And in Connecticut, the governor is doing an age-based vaccination rollout. An age-based vaccination rollout. And in New York City, they have been doing younger people with comorbidities. Younger people with comorbidities in their 50s. So it's age-based plus vaccination, kind of comorbid conditions and issues. I gotta show you the mic. I'll hide the mic, right? I'll hide the mic a little bit up. There we go. So one of the other things I want to tell you about that's so important is there are a lot of people who are essential workers who are not eligible for vaccinations in a lot of states. In Connecticut, the governor has made a push to enable child care and educators to be eligible for this round of vaccination. If I was in childcare, if I was an educator, I would want to get vaccinated and protected as soon as possible. If I was younger, I would choose the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. If I was younger, I'd choose the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. If I was in an area where there was South African variant or Brazilian variant, I'd choose the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. If I was older, I would choose the mRNA vaccines. We're seeing some protection against infection with the first dose of the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. We're seeing some protection. So if I was elderly, 65 or older, I would want the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines. I would want them. Unfortunately, in some countries like Denmark, if you're older than 75, they're recommending against the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. So maybe that's a case where you could use the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as well. If I was under 65, if I was in my 50s or in my 40s, hey, I am in my 40s, I would have to split the difference. I would try and get what vaccine I could get right away. Because I myself am going to be seeing COVID patients for the rest of my life. I personally, what's Dr. Murphy choosing? I choose the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I choose the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because I know that vaccine protects against South African and Brazilian variant. I also saw the laboratory data that Pfizer in the lab was not effective at inducing a blood sera to reduce or neutralize the South African variant. We will see convergent evolution. I haven't even mentioned the Los Angeles variant yet. But what you need to know, put simply, is not all vaccines are the same. Not all vaccines do the same thing effectively. Not all vaccines are in the same modality, but all vaccines protect. All vaccines protect. And that is so important. I can't get over that. People who are saying that we used stem cells for the Pfizer vaccine and therefore it's against God, it's against Christ. That's not true at all, right? And the people who said the mRNA vaccines insert into your genetic code and mutate your cells, that's wild and out too. That's just crazy. It's not real. Why am I choosing Johnson & Johnson? Put simply, it protects against the South African variant. It protects against the Brazilian variant. End of story. There's no other way around it. So I'm going to choose the J&J vaccine. Doesn't mean you shouldn't choose the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccines. You should choose the vaccine that you can get. Choose the vaccine you can get. And right now, with 240 million doses going to be available by the end of March, I think the available vaccine that's going to be around is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So I'm calling on all states. I'm calling on the federal government. Get this vaccine out in the hands of primary care physicians. Get it out in the hands of primary care physicians. Get it out in the hands of federally qualified health centers. Get it out in the hands of homeless shelters. We need to protect those who need it the most. And who need to be protected the most right now? I'm going to do this for emphasis. You ready? You ready? We need to protect those most vulnerable. The first and second wave of novel coronavirus, I was there. I was there for it. I was there from the beginning. People in crammed housing, people in nursing homes, people in underserved communities. These people were disproportionately affected. People of color have a higher mortality rate. People of color are scared of medical science for good reason. We completely dropped the ball as a community in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s of the last century. It continues today with the unequal access of people of color in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the aughts. It hasn't changed. We need to be dedicated to take care of those who need it the most. The people who need it the most deserve the J&J vaccine. And that's why I'm going to push forward aggressively to get Murphy Medical Associates hands on these vaccines, and we're going to use the J&J vaccine. This, of course, doesn't negate our fact to continually care for these patients in our long COVID clinics. End of story. If you've had COVID, we will take care of you at Murphy Medical Associates. If you're worried that you might have COVID, we'll test you at our coronatestct.com sites. We're in New York, we're in Connecticut, we're in New Jersey, we're in Maine, we're in Colorado. We are in every state that granted us an emergency use authorization. And when we can find a way to bring vaccines to all of you in all of those states, we're going to do it. So did I answer the question? What is the best vaccine? The best vaccine is the vaccine that you can get in your arm. The best vaccine is the vaccine that you can get in your arm. I'm personally choosing the J&J vaccine because of its data on prevention of the South African variant and the Brazilian variant. It's got 85% across all sites prevention of severe disease. That's 10% less than the symptomatic prevention from Pfizer. But that's across all sites. The J&J vaccine works effectively against the Brazilian and the South African variants. So I choose J&J for myself. But the best vaccine that you can get, the best one you can get, is the one you can get in your own arm. So let's get out there, let's mask up, let's stay safe. Let's go, team. I love you guys. Thank you for watching the Murphy's Medical Minute. I'm here for you at any time. Send me some comments. Follow me on Periscope. Follow me on Twitter at TakeWeightOffMD. You can follow me here on YouTube at Murphy's Medical Minute. Let's get ready. Let's have a great March. 240 million vaccines available by the end of March with the J&J vaccine. The FDA approves the J&J vaccine with emergency use authorization. The variants are growing. We need to CTFO. The J&J vaccine is going to help a lot of us chill out. Let's get it done. Let's take care of each other. Let's do our best. Let's exercise. Let's get sun. Let's eat right. Because remember, we are made to be well.